Jai Gurudev children. Today's topic is how do organisms reproduce. Now in this chapter we are going to study about the reproduction process. So reproduction means multiplication. Now an individual undergo this process to multiply their numbers, and it is essential to maintain the continuity of similar type of organism. And reproduction, it is of two types, asexual and sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, single individual multiply, and in sexual reproduction, two individuals of opposite sex are involved. So whether it is a sexual reproduction or asexual reproduction, now some of the steps are common in both the process. So those things we have to know. So out of them, the first step is the DNA copying, and the second step is the variation. So first of all, we have to know what is DNA copying. And for DNA copying, in order to be clear, you have to know where the DNA are present, which already in class 9 you all have studied. Now again, to explain that, here roughly I have drawn the diagram of a particular cell. Now children, we all know that if we are living things, we are made up of cells, and within the cells we have the nucleus. And within the nucleus, the hereditary materials are present, which sometimes they are known as chromosome and sometimes they are known as chromatin. But chemically they are known as the DNA. Now, and this chromatin or chromosome or DNA, they are located within the nucleus. And actually these are what? They are the hereditary materials which are transferred from parents to their offspring. And the DNA copying, it takes place in the particular phase or in a particular stage of the cell cycle, which is known as interphase. Now to explain when the DNA copying takes place, here you just see I have drawn one simple diagram only to explain the DNA copying. It's not so simple, but since in detail it is not required, simply I am explaining this term. So in simple term, if you are asked, DNA copying means doubling or duplication. That means single piece it gets double. And this one, it takes place in the interphase. Now you just see this first circle, and here two thread-like structures I have drawn. Now these are actually the chromosome or the hereditary material or the DNA. So when a particular cell is formed like this, now it differs. Numbers of chromosome will differ in different individual, but here just I have drawn two number. Now this two means the hereditary material now is present in a particular cell when that cell is formed. But when a cell is formed, at that time it is not ready to undergo cell division. In it, various modification takes place, growth takes place. So during that phase, that cycle it is known, or that period it is known as interphase. And in the interphase, one stage is there known as S phase. And during that phase, what happened? That single thread-like structures become double-stranded. If you see the diagram, here you can see one black colored line and one green color in both. And if you compare these two, you see here only one are there, but here these two again it is in pair. So when it becomes pair, it is known as DNA copying. So beside this, many other changes takes place in the interphase, so which we are not talking now. But after completing all the means the necessary requirement, now the cell is ready for undergoing the cell division, and ultimately from this cell it gives rise to new cell. So that means what? DNA copying is a process which takes place in the interphase. It is common for both asexual and sexual reproduction, and it is necessary because when the cell division takes place, in the two cell, the numbers of or the DNA means half will be transferred in both the cell. So that's why DNA copying is necessary. Beside this, the second step means, or we can say the second character which is common is the variation. Now variation means difference, or you can say that no two individuals are alike. Many changes takes place. Now, but question arises, what takes place in the asexual reproduction? In asexual individual means, or in asexual reproduction, what happens? A single individual multiply. So usually their offsprings are identical, but although identical, sometimes some changes takes place in the genetic setup or in the hereditary material for some unknown region, and that is said to be the mutation, and due to that the variation takes place. And this variation is very much essential because it helps them to adjust with the change in the environment. So it is also necessary for the survival. So that means what? These two characters are common in both the process. Now next in your book they have explained about the different types of asexual reproduction. So now we are going to study few of them, the asexual reproduction. Now for it, here I have drawn some diagram. You just see, here I have drawn, if you can see it. Now here you just see, now the first one, that asexual reproduction. Now the first one, if you see, it is said to be the fission. Now the question may arise, why different terms are given? Now different terms means what? Although one individual is involved to multiply, but the way it takes place, it differs in different organisms. So that's why different names are given. So in the first one, that is fission, here what happens? Simply a single cell splits into two cells or into number of cells. So accordingly they are classified as binary fission and multiple fission. Or you can say that it is of two types. One is known as binary fission, where a single cell it gets split into two new cells, which example is the amoeba. And the second one you just see, now here that single cell undergo repeated division, but the cell wall it breaks only when the surrounding becomes suitable, and then from this one cell it gives rise to many new individuals. And when from one cell it gives rise to many individuals, it is said to be multiple fission. So the best example we can give is the bacteria. But here the difference is there. One is that in binary two cells form, in multiple many cells. Another difference is that binary fission, it is common during the favorable condition, and multiple fission when the environment is not suitable for that individual, in that this process take place. So this is one type of asexual reproduction. Then the next one is the fragmentation. Now for fragmentation you just see, now in the fragmentation means the fragment, means the formation of fragment takes place. Now it occurs now in some simple organism. So here I have taken the example of Spirogyra. Now in the Spirogyra, there what happened? When this particular plants, when it gets fully matured, now this particular organism is the simplest one. They don't have any root stem but one thallus structure. It breaks. You just see two black line I have drawn, that means it breaks, and from one piece it forms many fragments. Now then from each of these fragments, if it gives rise to a new individual, it is said to be that in that the fragmentation takes place. Or since through fragment it has given rise to more than one type of individual, it is said to be the asexual type of reproduction. Then you go through the another type of third type of asexual reproduction, which is known as regeneration. Now in the regeneration, if you see here, the term itself indicate regenerate, or from one part it give rise to a new individual. And usually this process takes place in those organisms where due to some injury, their body part, it has been divided into various parts. So here the example I have given is of planaria. Now this planaria, due to some injury, it has been divided into 3 pieces, 1, 2, 3. Now from this 3 pieces, again it has given rise to 3 new individuals. So since from 3 pieces it has given rise to 3 new individuals, it is said to be the asexual reproduction. Now here one more thing you have to remember, this process even it occurs in higher organisms like lizard, but that is not a asexual reproduction process. In lizard, when the tail is lost, that lost tail again regenerate, but from that lost piece of tail it never give rise to a new lizard. So that's why in lizard it is not a regeneration process. So similarly, many other examples are there. Similar type of examples are there in higher organism where this process is common, but it is not an asexual reproduction. Then another thing, the question may arise between regeneration and fragmentation. Now it is almost similar, but here the difference is that regeneration only during accidental case it becomes an asexual reproduction process. Then you go through the 4th type, that is the budding. Now here the example I have taken is of hydra. Now hydra, it is one type of aquatic small organism. Their structure is similar to that of a tree. You just see this, it looks like tree trunk, and these branches, these are actually the tentacles. Now here what happened in such type of organism, now here I have taken hydra, even yeast also another example. There what happened, they form some outgrowth occur in their body, and this outgrowth, it is known as the bud, and this bud gradually grow into similar type of organism with the development of tentacles. So, and when it becomes fully developed, it gets separated from the parent body, and now from single one it has given rise to 2 individuals. And since the multiplication had taken place, it is said to be the asexual reproduction. So budding is also another process where means a single individual can multiply into more. So that means what? These are now, beside this, many other processes are there like the vegetative propagation. Then we have the spore formation, which gradually we are going to study. Now today we have studied only 4 types of asexual reproduction, where the first one is the fission, second one is the fragmentation, third one is the regeneration, and the last means for today the last one is the budding. Now in this part you have to know all examples of each of this type. Beside this, even you have to practice the diagram. Sometimes based on diagram also they usually ask question. So that means what? We have studied what is DNA copying, significance of variation, then about the 4 different types of asexual reproduction which takes place in simple organism. Now beside this, few more processes are there which gradually we are going to study. Now for today this much, you all just go through, practice all the diagram, and also you have to know all the example. Like for regeneration in your book, the diagram of this one is given. Beside this, the example is about the, you can give the example of hydra. So for today this much. Thank you. Jai Gurudev.